Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Joining us now to review some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Arise News analyst Emmanuel Efeni. Good morning, Emmanuel.
Good morning, Ruben.
Yes, Emmanuel, good to see you.
Good morning, Adesua. Let's start with this day newspaper straight away. Again, Buhari appeals to Amos Okorocha, Yari others not to defect, says he did his best to ensure free primaries, cautions politicians on divisive statements. Yes, President Muhammadu Buhari still appealing to his party men who are aggrieved, or better still, who feel shortchanged by the National Working Committee during the primaries, and their candidates are not in. And I don't know how far that appeal will assuage the feelings of persons like Ibikunle Amosu, who is hell-bent on installing his own successor.
Well, I mean, it's on record that the president is intervening. This is not the first time he will be meeting with aggrieved governors and aggrieved members of the party. He's doing what he's supposed to do, to provide leadership, to bring all aggrieved persons under his wings. But you know, the way it is in politics, sometimes when people feel aggrieved, the first thing they think of is their own political survival. Some of these governors, their grievance is coming not just from the fact that they were not allowed to have their way, but also from self-preservation reasons. If you're a governor and your structures, you know, have been distorted, or your structures have been taken away from you, or the National Working Committee has put you in a very difficult situation where you can lose part of your relevance, then, you know, you begin to fight for survival. I think, you know, they are likely more to rely on their own survival instincts and their relevance at the grassroots level. However, the president has done very well, you know, to call all of them together, to say, look, let's go into this battle together as a team. However, the president is also acting from a selfish position. He's trying to protect his own interests, because as president, you need to win votes, you know, in different constituencies across the country. Yes. And it's the people who are in those constituencies who will deliver the votes for you. How this plays out, of course, we will see in the presidential elections, in the general elections.
Now, I think after November 18, when it will be impossible to change candidates.
That's the deadline for a substitutional candidate.
So I'm sure then you will see by November 17, some persons will take concrete actions, either to look for alternative platform if they are not satisfied. Well, of course.
If you are going to look for alternative platform, you will need to do it. You will need to do it before November 18.
Of course, they are doing it. They must be working on the ground. As you said, political relevance is at the heart of this matter for some of these governors. Let's look at New Telegraph. 2019, 500 clerics fast pray for Buhari's re-election. Now, bullets there. President, looters won't return. PDP, APC members are looters. IBB, PDP will win landslide. Tinubu, we are not afraid of Atiku. Then Atiku, federal government can't fund budget by selling assets. A lot of stories there.
Well, what you can be sure of is that the 2019 general election at all levels is going to be very robust. From what you can see, you know, the various interested parties, they are not joking, as we say in Nigeria. But what we will insist on is that the process should be free, fair,
and credible.
Yes. And that the government, the sitting government, must do everything within its powers to ensure that that is the case, no matter what the interest is. I think that President Buhari personally, you know, has a responsibility to ensure that under his watch, because this will be the first major general election that he will conduct.
Yes.
And he should conduct it, you know, after the fashion of a gentleman, after the fashion of a statesman.
Again, that very bold headline there draws the attention of how spiritual Nigeria can be. Clerics fasting ahead of the election. It's not the first time we see clerics coming out to...
Are they fasting for free? Well, I'm fasting for free.
No.
I don't know what they are fasting for.
No, but this is a spiritual season for Nigerians.
What makes it spiritual?
No, religion is always part of our lives. We are... as Africans, we are always forever looking up to God. But it is not God that will come down to vote.
Or go and get the PVC.
But the belief, is that God has a hand generally in the affairs of men. But at the end of the day, it's the Nigerian people that have to make a choice. So if the spiritualists, if they want to pray for peace, pray for progress, pray for stability, fine. The only problem you can pick in that story is that it looks like a partisan, politically motivated fasting. Because I think they say they are fasting so that President Buhari can win.
Yes.
Well, maybe the Atiku camp on the PDP side will now recruit 2,000 clerics
or more
to pray,
And we're not short of clerics in this country.
We're not. When it comes to that, we're not.
Let's look at the Nation newspaper. 2019, why Atiku's dream will crash by Tinubu. Well, Tinubu has been making a jest of the meeting Atiku and his team are holding in Dubai to strategize, saying that whether...
Is that meeting still on? They are back in the country.
They are back in the country, but the photograph and stories from that meeting was trending a couple of days ago. And as if to scare their opponents, and now they are responding. So whether you hold the meeting in Dubai or in the jungle, you won't win. But again,
that's political talk.
Yes, it's the Nigerian people who decide.
And it's very common in this season. We're going to hear more of this in the build-up to the election.
More of that, and say Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, there's also this story that you may likely head the Presidential Campaign Council.
Yes.
So,
It was at the villa yesterday.
Yeah, so maybe he's already doing the job.
He's talking his way into that position.
Well, I don't know about that. But if he's going to lead the President's Campaign Council, he also has to be seen to be making the right noise. So this is like making noise and saying, look, Atiku won't win. If you were to interview former Vice President Atiku too, he too will say, well, Tinubu is deceiving himself because this time around, there's going to be a real contest. But what we can say is that, the various candidates, the various gladiators should be engaging us, Nigerians, at the level of ideas. Rather than at the level of mere rhetoric or at the level of abuse, self-abuse or abuse of the other. We would like to know what each person, each candidate, each ticket is bringing to the table for the benefit of the people. If we have a conversation around ideas, then we will have a quality process rather than a poor process that is just about mindless talk.
It's another way of taking the electorate for granted. When you don't come up with any idea, you just like a sounding brass, saying nothing really, as it were. Let's look at Vanguard newspaper. Minimum wage. Federal government Labour tackles state governors. Labour rejects 22,500 naira, reversed to 66,500 demand. Convenes Central Working Committee meeting on Friday. Economic Management Team Osibajo meets. Federal government adamant on 24,000 as governors insist on 22,500. Federal government moves court action to stop planned nationwide strike.
Well, it's like we're back to square one. Because if we say that Labour is reverting to 66,500, that means that was the point where we were when the president set up the tripartite committee to look into the negotiations. And that's really unfortunate. It's also unfortunate that the federal government has been adopting divide and rule tactics. Some sections of Labour, they've been trying to resile out of that entire process. But again, organized labor, the NLC and the TUC, they're saying that they are ready for the strike.
Yes.
On Tuesday next week, the general strike in the country. And we've said again and again on this program that government should take a look at the implications, both for the economy and for the emerging, electoral process. What you have now is a situation whereby the federal government and the state governors have just displayed their arrogance and their insensitivity to the demands of labor. If it is meant to be a tripartite meeting, and then labor was not part of that meeting, I mean, that's like, throwing away the entire process that was reached. And labor is saying that, in fact, more than 50% of the persons who attended the other meeting on October 4 and October 5 agreed to the 30,000 minimum wage. So there is a breach of trust, there is a breakdown of negotiations, and, well, the Ministry of Labor is involved in it, but maybe the president himself should personally, intervene to ensure that there is, more purposeful dialogue with labor, having agreed in principle that there is a need to review the minimum wage.
Yes.
Some people will say, well, maybe you talk to labor too, and say, well, labor should not be too difficult. But labor has had to climb down from 60,500
yes.
to 30,000.
I think the point labor is making by saying that they are going back to 66,500 is that if the tripartite meeting already agreed on an amount and the government is climbing down, it means you are rejecting the outcome of that meeting, in which case they too are returning to their original position. Like I mentioned yesterday, the process is that once the tripartite meeting has agreed on a figure, because that meeting includes government, private sector, and organized labor. Now, the organized private sector, rather, and labor all agreed on 30,000, including government was in that meeting. So if 1/3 of that meeting is pulling out from the decision, then there's a problem. The right procedure would have been to take the 30,000 to the national via a bill, where that bill will also be heard. There will be public hearing. People can make further contributions, and you cannot make your case for inability to pay, despite the willingness to pay at the National Assembly level, at the level of public hearing, before it becomes law. So at that stage, you can still have room for maneuvering, climbing down a little bit, asking labor to...
However, there was a report that even at the negotiations, at the meetings, the ones before October 4 and 5 and all of that, that some states even offered to pay even more than 30,000. And that's why what we confront here, as you have said on this subject before, is part of the challenge of federalism. If you have a proper federal system, each of the federating units in the country can pay, do things in terms of development or whatever,
yes,
or welfare, according to each state's ability.
Yes.
But this uniformity that we have imposed
and even
on Nigeria creates its own
living
problems.
in various states.
Some people will argue that Labour has brought this upon itself. A divided front they have been for quite some time now, and they've been wavering on some issues, and that's why this fight, which they say is long overdue. This current minimum wage should have been reviewed 2 years ago. Apart from that, I think the government also needs to tread with caution here. They seem to be pulling up things up their sleeves. First, it was no work, no pay threat, and now they're going to the court to stop the November 6th national.
Well, by international standards and by International Labour Organization (ILO) rules, the minimum wage is supposed to be reviewed every 4 years.
Yes.
Now, Nigeria has not been keeping to that because government has either not made itself available or has insisted on its inability to pay. So in terms of principle, Labour has a point. The federal government also has agreed in principle. Where the problem lies is agreeing on the amount that should be the baseline going forward, okay? So, but I don't see why it's so difficult to have a result-oriented conversation.
Yes.
If the principle is agreed upon by all the parties, then why is the conversation so difficult?
Yeah, let's just take one more Nigeria story there. Above Vanguard newspaper.
And that will be the last, unfortunately, that will be the last story. We can take it very quickly.
Yes, the NHIS, at last, Buhari bows to pressure, suspend Usman, probes tenure. Now, the Minister of Health suspended this executive secretary of the NHS, Professor Yusuf. The president asked him to go back.
He reinstated.
Yeah, reinstated him and asked the minister that they should go and work harmoniously. The board, the governing council of NHS also received a lot of petitions and suspended him for proper investigation. And the next thing was that a battalion of police led him to resume
Not
work.
a battalion, some police.
Okay, some.
Do you know what a battalion is?
Okay, that's an hyperbole. You will agree. Using journalistic license there of hyperbole. Now, at last, the president has suspended him for proper investigation. Why all this foot dragging, all this while? It's a question the president will answer. Indeed.
And we'll definitely watch that space and see how it all ends up. Thank you very much, Emmanuel Efeni, for the headlines. It's time now for a short break.